Hello everyone. Slides are working, cool. So my name is Michael Williams. I work for Microsoft as a technical solutions professional. Now what that actually means is, I actually don't really know. It means many things from app innovation, AI, mobile. I used to be a mobile developer and now somehow I've fallen into this new technology, blockchain. And next slide, I don't have a clicker. So basically what I'm going to show you today is some real practical POCs that have gone into production. We've had many customers across the globe, Switzerland, Nigeria, even Webjet across Australia and New Zealand building a booking system for managing trust amongst hotels, airlines, and also the person purchasing the flight. So, slides working? Oh, that clicker. Thank you. Ooh, there we go. Okay. According to Research and Markets, the global blockchain market is set to grow to just over $8.68 billion by the end of 2024, from 212.12 million in 2016. So if you think the prices of all the cryptocurrencies went up, imagine what's going to happen when it goes that big. But don't go investing and buying cryptocurrency after this talk, please. I don't want to be held responsible. So that's where Microsoft foresees the blockchain market going, and that's exactly why we are investing so much in this space. There's a bit of a mess up on that slide, but I'll talk about it anyway. So ideally what this slide was meant to say is blockchain has got to stop being referred to as cryptocurrency. I speak to so many people and I talk about blockchain and they're like, what, you mean Bitcoin? No. We're talking about blockchain for enterprise. And when we talk about blockchain for enterprise, it's a completely different thing. So blockchain establishes a secure shared source of truth. It's data stored in a ledger and records every transactions. So we have two main things that blockchain holds really well. One, security, and two, decentralization, as we've heard so many times today. Now, why is this applicable to enterprise? Because businesses run on trust. And trust is a hard thing to guarantee. Trust comes from many parties. It could be the supplier and supply chain. It could be a warehouse. It could even be a driver picking up that box of wine and dropping it to the retailer. All these parties involved in that supply chain scenario have some sort of trust that they're held responsible for. And blockchain can help ensure that trust and make sure we can't break that trust. So why does blockchain matter for enterprise? As I said before, business is built on trust. Now read these 3 points. They're probably actually very, very small. I hate doing PowerPoint slides, so I usually just talk. $280 billion in banking industry fines since 2009. That's a lot of money. Blockchain can help reduce that massively. $21 billion cost of tax return fraud in the US. If we bring in a blockchain scenario there, it can reduce that entire set of fraud. Well, it'd be great in the perfect world. 48 million illnesses from contaminated food in the US each year. If we bring in a blockchain-style security trust to food contamination that's gone from warehouses to retailers to even on container ships, have we had a blockchain solution in these cases? It can dramatically reduce the amount of food contamination that goes on in the food industry. So let's imagine that scenario right now. Food contamination scenario. So that's where could be packaged food goes across the world from retailers, providers, warehousing, everywhere, has to pass through some sort of trust mechanism on a contract. If I'm the guy if I'm the farmer growing vegetables, I then package those vegetables, put it in a box. Those boxes go on a truck. That truck goes to a warehouse. That warehouse goes to Coles or Countdown or wherever the retailer may be. Everywhere across that supply chain, I need to secure the trust according to the contract. Where is that food? And we can determine food contamination if it crosses over territories where it shouldn't be. How do we do that? We can actually bring in an IoT solution here, having devices detect on GPS where that food is passing through around the world. I know this sounds really, really bizarre, but you'd be surprised how much of this stuff is actually going into production today. Okay, so that's the food industry, that's great. But mainly I want to point out the commonalities that are across these use cases, and that's asset transfer. If I'm selling a car, I need to put a price on that car and the buyer is going to offer me a price. We have to come to some sort of agreement. We also have to get that asset valued and then assure that it's quality. 4 different parties involved on a smart contract ensures a much secure asset transfer process. Cross-organizational workflow, many parties are involved in an audit process. So we want to ensure each part of that audit process is logged, recorded, and secure, and all ensured trust between every different party along the chain. Now, this is where I really want to spend most of the time talking about, and this is the stuff that's happening today with Microsoft. 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. They have built a supply chain, POC, that is rolling into production. I'm not here to talk about the POC prototypes that are going on. I'm here to talk about what's actually rolling out into production. 3M are one of the first companies. They are from the States, Minnesota, who are rolling out a real-time blockchain solution for supply chain, and it is rolling into production on Azure today. Bank Hapolim, I think is how you say it, are ensuring basically issuing bank guarantees. So this is the finance industry that's being disrupted and rolling out a blockchain solution into production. The one I really love talking about is Webjet. The travel industry is even utilizing this. And they have actually rolled something out into production. So if you book a flight, that flight is going to be creating a smart contract. That smart contract is going to be signed by me as the buyer purchasing a flight. The hotel that I booked through Webjet, they are also going to be updating that smart contract. The airline will also be recording an audit on that smart contract, as well as all the other parties involved in booking flights, hotels, even car hire places. I don't think they're on the smart contract just yet, but this stuff is rolling out into production today. Singapore Airlines did a really cool one, and that's around basically our royalty payments and for royalty points. Through a mobile app, we have different parties involved from the user. We have people inside Singapore Airlines that are going to be audited. All those people involved in a blockchain context are rolled out through a royalty management system. So we've seen this pattern across many different industry scenarios. Manufacturing through asset tracking, retail through loyalty tracking, product provenance, insurance, even claims management. And I'll show you a company called InterSwitch that is doing that today as well. Banking capital markets, I'll talk about Bank of America and JP Morgan. 2 big Wall Street giants that are actually bringing this stuff into production today. Government, licensing and ID, I actually don't have any examples, I'm sorry there. That's going to take some time. But health, that's InterSwitch. InterSwitch is health. That's a really, really cool scenario for tracking pharmaceutical goods and ensuring that from the pharmaceutical goods being made all the way down to the patient purchasing them at a pharmacy, that's all done through a blockchain smart contract. So customers are looking for a similar set of outcomes, reducing costs, mitigating risk, and reimagining the process between an audit process. So what's Azure building? I won't keep it too technical, I'll try to keep it high level. Blockchain wasn't built for enterprise. This is why it's taking so long to roll out into production. Ledgers were designed for public networks. As Bitcoin was first released, completely public, completely distributed. Ethereum was then released with the concept of smart contracts. And then integration is difficult and costly. 3 to 6 months it takes to build a POC without templated deployments, which Azure can offer today. Now, one of the biggest struggles with some companies, they'd be loving the concept of blockchain, they understand it, they want to roll something out. It's time expensive, 3 to 6 months of development time, and no ROI in that entire time. Most enterprise companies do not have the scale, time, I'm sure they have the money, but to invest in such a long procedure that at the end of the day, we don't really know where blockchain is going. Well, according to what Microsoft predicts, seeing the $1 billion mark by 2024, I think it is going somewhere. And you're seeing big Wall Street giants actually rolling this stuff out into production. I think it's enough to start investing in this space. So Microsoft went one direction, and I think one of the biggest things that we have over a lot of other companies that are doing the same thing is our focus, and that was for developers, making it developer friendly, making it easy to build this stuff into production. And that's where Microsoft focused a lot of time. We spent time understanding what smart contracts were, what ledgers were, how we actually roll this stuff out. Then we took it into context from a developer standpoint. I came as an app developer. I'm no business expert behind blockchain at all, and I'll say that with complete transparency. I'm an app developer and I'm a technical person. The business side for me, I don't like to pay much attention to. So as a developer, I don't even really need to understand what blockchain does, in a way I sort of do, but to roll it out, Azure provides a very developer, user-friendly approach to building stuff on Corda, Hyperledger, Ethereum. Microsoft has also released a new consensus called Proof of Authority. So as I was speaking earlier about blockchain not being built for enterprise, Proof of Authority is actually bringing that decentralization more into a central identity companion as Active Directory. So the idea of what Proof of Authority is about controlling all your permissions, all the people involved in the entire blockchain architecture. They have to be set up permissions through a central source of control. And in our case, it's Azure Active Directory. We won't talk too much about that. So we also make it easier to integrate into other platforms. SAP is a big one. Because this is a very supply chain driven scenario, we're going to see a lot of supply chain companies, big suppliers moving into this blockchain space, right? And a lot of them are already running ERP systems such as SAP. So how do we integrate? We have enterprise ledgers that are produced on Azure that can integrate into systems such as SAP. Client apps and devices. So I really wish I could plug this in and show you a cool mobile demo, but I can't. Basically, I can build a mobile app off a private Ethereum network in less than 2 weeks. And I can show that to my business and say, here's a smart wallet application. When I first started running with Microsoft and the blockchain technology, I was called over to Korea. For some reason, I don't know how this customer found out what we were releasing in the future, which was the Azure Blockchain Workbench. One-click deployments for an entire private Ethereum network. They knew about it before me, and I work at Microsoft. And then they called me over to Korea to teach them how to use it. And I had never used it before. But basically, they were able to roll out this smart wallet application in less than a month and show it to the business. And that's what the biggest thing is about what Azure can offer you, is getting your prototypes into production as soon as possible and showing return on investment where it's most important. So because we're building end-to-end blockchain apps, it's hugely undertaking, as I mentioned before. POCs are expensive. We've got to do all these type of things, and that's control message ingestion. We've got to set up nodes. We've got to then install sort of the software requirements on our nodes. Then we've got to talk about how we're going to manage the consensus and build all this. If you have to build this stuff from scratch, it is a huge process. So this is what we've done to take on those challenges. Populate pre-configured networks, integrate relevant cloud services, and build a simple interface. As I was mentioning before, and this is around one-click deployments. So say, for example, I wanted to build a smart wallet application on Corda. I can jump into the Azure Marketplace, click deploy. That's an entire Corda backend, entire Corda distributed ledger deployed on Azure. I don't have to worry about setting up consensus, setting up my nodes. I just select the amount of nodes and click deploy. The Workbench does it on a private Ethereum network under Proof of Authority consensus. We also have another tool that's coming. I keep getting told I'm never meant to speak about this, but I will say it anyway because customers already know about it pretty much. Well, some do. We're releasing a fully managed ledger service very, very soon on Azure where you can do everything in the workbench across any type of ledger. Through a nice user interface portal, all I do is click to deploy, write my smart contract, click to deploy the smart contract into that distributed ledger, and away you go. You can start building software deliverable apps. I mean, you can set up that ledger in less than half an hour. So again, pre-configured templates and infrastructure, multi-chain, Corda, Ethereum, Hyperledger, Quorum. That's a few of the examples that we have on the marketplace today. We can deploy on flexible topologies, set all that stuff up yourself. You don't need to worry about. You just click deploy, and you'll get your entire set of resources deployed in the cloud, and that'll be your entire ledger. So we've enabled connections into these existing ledgers. So again, talking about making it easy to integrate into things like SAP, Salesforce, for example, sharing that source of truth between all these different parties. You can even bring these other SaaS applications into your identity provider, Azure Active Directory, and control that single source of truth and audit process across all these different SaaS applications. And that's the Azure Blockchain Workbench. If you were there yesterday, I did a workshop on it. If you want to see this in production, see me do another demo, please feel free to come and see me at the stand afterwards. One-click deployments on private Ethereum that can be up and running in half an hour. Simplify development, accelerate time to value, and innovate with confidence. Me, I am an app developer personally. I like building apps. I don't want to waste time building infrastructure. I use the Workbench to deploy my private Ethereum network built on proof of authority, and then I can get straight to building my smart contract. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to be starting to build something on Ethereum, build something on Corda, we're just reinventing the wheel when we're building the ledger. There's no need to go ahead and build this. It's already done. We want to focus on building the smart contract or building the audit process. Whether it's a smart contract, whether it's a transform, depending on what ledger you're using, that's the area we want to focus time on. So these are some of the Azure Marketplace offerings that are available today. Ethereum Studio, Syscoin. Like I said before, all I click is on the Get It Now button, and I can deploy it directly into Azure. So again, focus time on adding that business value, focus time on innovation. I want to focus time on building that smart contract, then building the products around that smart contract process. Say, for example, I take a supply chain scenario that I want to build a mobile app for. I deploy a template, and then I get straight into writing a Solidity contract, deploy that into the Workbench, and then off I go and build my app. And I can do that in such a very short amount of time. Okay, now let's get to the good stuff, the customers. Xbox. Anyone ever heard of this solution? Xbox, we have one, yes. So, Xbox had one big challenge. 45 days payments to publishers through royalty payments. Xbox worked with Microsoft, we are the same company, built a blockchain solution for delivering an automated process around royalty payments. Reduced that 45 days into a very short time. I'm not exactly sure how fast it is to actually pay to the publisher, but it's reduced it by at least 10 times. And that's what it looks like. Managing royalty payments between different parties. We have developer, licensing, marketing, distribution, content provider. 5 different guys involved in the smart contract. And because we're automating that audit process between those 5 parties, that 45 days to pay the publisher is reduced dramatically. Yeah, WebJet, we've already spoken about that. But again, reduced booking errors. That was the main reason behind it. That's the travel industry. So I've talked about royalty payments. That's one scenario. 2, this is on reducing booking errors. Easy to do. They aren't using the Workbench, but they're using, I think it's either Corda or Hyperledger on Azure. And they're rolling this out into production today. It's not a POC, it's going live into production, meaning they're handling throughput, they're handling scalability. I know I've heard a lot of talks today so far, and all this talk around sick of POCs, I'm sick of the prototypes. Who is doing it today in production? There's an example. That's what it looks like at the end of the day, I find it funny. It sounds like such a really incredible solution, but look how easy the smart contract is. There's 3 parties, and me as a booker. You know how quick that is to write in Solidity? I could do that because I've written stuff in Solidity, I can write that smart contract 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how proactive I am that day. InterSwitch. Pharmaceutical goods. No, that's the wrong company. Nigeria. This is around basically the need for capital. So raising money. If I want to borrow money, I want to go through an audit process between all the different financial institutions to borrow money. This is quite a more extensive audit process. Can you see all the different parties involved when I want to borrow money? Bank admin, corporate sales director, supplier, all these different parties are involved. I will go back to and see the shared ledger part. It's too small to see, but I'll share these notes afterwards. You can kind of see along the way how it's actually produced on the blockchain. Beulah, this is a really, really cool one. So this is around that food contamination scenario, ensuring food safety. So they're actually using AI here to enable insights and integrate that in with an audit process. Look how complex that looks. It's really not that hard to understand. From harvest all the way to the retail store, we're tracking along every party involved, every transaction or action they're making to that original harvest through a smart contract. And see how more extensive the shared ledger is getting updated to? Every single time, you see every little section you're seeing along that shared ledger, that's known as a transaction, which is also produced on a block, which is then mined onto the blockchain. And when a block's mined onto the blockchain, that's when it's updated through the consensus in the distributed network. Maersk, I think is how you say it. This is around marine insurance, an insurance scenario. All these guys that I'm showing you today, this is stuff that's production ready. Some are still in POC, but most of them are rolling out into production. So this was ensuring around risk assessment. So ideally when containers are moved between countries, sometimes they cross over past where they shouldn't go. And they're using an IoT style solution to send GPS locations through an IoT message back to the smart contract to determine whether that container ship took the correct route to the country it was going to. Sounds pretty far-fetched when you're talking about this stuff running in production, doesn't it? 3M, we spoke about them before, Minnesota's manufacturing company. This is the pharmaceutical example for counterfeit drugs. So making sure from where the drugs are produced to where they're actually being sold in the retailer to stop counterfeit drugs. Blockchain in action, and then we can see the entire workflow there. Is it starting to look like a similar pattern between all these things? See how the smart contract is the focus of how the blockchain architecture works? So why do you want to go spending all that time building your Ethereum ledger when everyone's already done it before? Just deploy it. Get to this part, building the scenario workflow. That's what Microsoft is trying to get customers to realize, the enterprise space, that is where you should be focusing the time and money. In the smart contract, in the agreement, the audit process. That's where we're spending the time. Nestle, this is a really, really cool one. So this was optimizing their current supply chain with a product. And again, it's reducing the amount of manual process in that audit process required. So the time in the supply chain from producing the goods to delivering the goods, it's reduced by a massive amount. And the amount of time and money saved there is huge. Again, look, it's the same workflow. Supply chain, it's all the same. Just different parties involved. We just specify on our smart contract, on our transform, what actions these guys can take during the audit process. The bank, I can never say this last name, Hapalum, I think that's how you say it. But again, this is for issuing bank guarantees. Another example in the finance industry for issuing credit. We go through guarantee, review, online application to bank approval. This is a very, very small smart contract, but that's all it takes. Like a little prototype, roll that small piece out into production, take small steps. This one, I think, is really game-changing, and this is like a key reason why you should be focusing in where blockchain is heading, because if Bank of America is looking at it, I think it's indication that this stuff is going somewhere. So this is a very, very small prototype that Bank of America built for basically standby letter of credit. It's another credit example in the finance industry, but Bank of America are doing it. JP Morgan is doing something similar. Look how simple that smart contract process is, that audit process. It's just as simple of application to bank, advisor, beneficiary. 4 different parties. We provide the actions that they need to take on that smart contract. Don't worry about the ledger. Moog. Now this one's a really, really cool one. This is around basically Moog and Microsoft for tokenized physical assets. So Moog produces some really cool stuff around 3D printing, and ideally they wanted to have better tracking of how their assets were getting pushed to the consumers. It's just the same thing over and over again. I could go through so many examples. Singapore Airlines, I won't waste time on that. Look how easy that one is. It's not that game-changing, but at the end of the day, the return on investment there when you're automating this audit process, it's massive. Okay, conclusion, we understand blockchain is a distributed ledger. Blockchain is useful for enterprise. And one of the biggest things is it's rolling out into production today. Microsoft can help you get there through one-click deployments on Azure or even customizing that entire deployment on Azure. But making the ledger deployment simple is what we want to do. We want to focus on the audit process. Here's some links, guys, if you want to have a look at any links available. And I also want to point out too, Sid Consulting, guys, if you just want to stand up at the front there. I worked with these guys building a scenario on the workbench for a supply chain example with wine. And if you want to hear how we rolled this out in less than 2 weeks with IoT Hub and the Azure Blockchain Workbench, come see us afterwards and we'll be happy to show a demo. And that is the end. Thank you, guys.